All right. Well, hi there, everybody. I am Carl Hooker, excited to be on EdTech Bites with Mr. Carrillo. Gabriel, thank you so much for inviting me and having me on here. Those of you guys that don't know me, I've been in education for 20 something plus years. I won't go into how long. You can tell I've got my Diet of Dysentery shirt on just for this podcast. And I'm excited because I get a chance to actually talk while actually designing or making something at the same time, which is always a tricky thing. So, been a teacher for several years, administrator for several years here in Austin, Texas, just right up the road there from you, Mr. Carrillo. And yeah, and I actually discovered some of your work years ago. Just a small story, real quick, that I was doing something called the EdTech Lip Sync Battle, and I think it was at TCA. And while I was there, I was like, I need inspiration. I need some sort of idea that like mixes maybe poetry or poetry slams or something. And I came across your blog and one of your videos of you doing you're throwing out a little poetry slam to your students. And so I connected with you on Twitter and give you a shout out during the show. But there was a packed house, and they're like, I've never met you, but I go, he's from down the road. He's from San Antonio, so got to give a shout out to a fellow Texan, man.
That's awesome, man. That poetry jam or poetry jam, it's not a jam session. Throwdown. Slam. Yeah. Whatever you want to call it, man. I'm looking at your hands maneuver that pizza crust.
I'm an Italian too, so I'm part Italian, just so you know.
But yeah, that was an awesome idea. I remember working with a teacher, and she wanted to do like some poetry things, some poetry slam. And I was like, okay, how can we take this to the next level? And I locked myself in my office. I happened to have my podcast equipment in my bag. I slapped it together, threw it on there, and I pulled out the old notebook, started writing some rhymes, and it was all about tacos, wasn't it?
Tacos Pastor, man. How can you not throw in a little Tacos Pastor? I was like, oh, dude, you just threw it down, man.
I'm gonna put the link to that video in the description of this episode so you guys can check it out. But Carl, I want to thank you very much for accepting the invite to be on the show. I've been following your work for quite some time. I'm not the only one. This actually stemmed from a couple conversations that we've been having for the past month and a half, actually. And then just a couple weeks ago, gosh, it's already been like 2 weeks, hasn't it?
Yeah, that was. I know. I was just thinking, when did we connect with Northeast? That was the 26th. So this podcast is on the 5th. Yeah, so it was 2 weeks almost.
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago, Carl. I don't know. I'm going to backtrack. 2 weeks ago, we had the privilege of listening to Carl actually speak to our inspiring innovators in our district. We're starting this cohort, and he came in as our kickoff. And I'm going to tell you, man, those teachers are pumped. We're all pumped.
Good.
We thank you very much for doing that, for connecting with our district, talking to our educators. And what we really enjoyed is that, and I know from literally standing in line at conferences to hear you speak, that you do not speak at people. You inspire and you bring us in. It's interactive. So we really appreciate that. Even during these times of COVID, you were able to inspire us and interact with us. So that's awesome. So
I appreciate that, man. I think that's something that that's something I've always taken with me. It's like, I'm still always an educator. I'll use the word teacher all the time with myself, even though I know technically I haven't been in a classroom in a while. But for me, I don't know. I feel like I don't want to ever lose that connection, and that's a big part of it, part of who I am. So I think that's why I'm doing that. By the way, just to let you know, just kind of updating the audience here, what I've done is I've had this crust, I guess baking, not baking, but just kind of sitting for a couple hours. And now what I'm doing is I'm adding. This is just a little bit of garlic butter. You can kind of see in there. And so this is just a little garlic butter. So I like to kind of get the crust primed this way. And then what I'm about to do is throw it in the oven. So now it's got this nice little butter layer on it. It's going to go in the oven for a few minutes.
So my next question to you is, let's talk about food. But obviously, you guys know, as you're watching this, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're not, if you're listening to us on your podcast app, just know that you can always catch the video on YouTube. Just do a quick search for EdTech Bites on YouTube, and you will be able to find the channel. Subscribe to it. Check out this video because we have some great conversation both about education, the future of conferences, and pizza crust. Because when you spoke to us at that event, you said that you have hands down, like, you've perfected this thin crust method, right?
Right. So it's the crust itself doesn't have a lot in it. I mean, it's your basics. It's flour, it's yeast, a little bit of garlic salt, warm water to kind of get that yeast primed, right? And this particular crust, I don't put sugar in. I put sugar in some before because the yeast needs to eat a little bit.
Yeah.
And a little bit of olive oil, and so it sits. I got a little bread machine that I cook it up, that I kind of let it grow in, and takes about 2 hours for that, and then I'm doing kind of the first part of it because we were talking on the this is what my workshop turned into. It turned into a session about how to make the best pizza. That's when you know, by the way, that you're in a good workshop. It's like I let you guys kind of took me in a direction, and we just kept going that way, right? It was like,
oh yeah.
So they were like, oh, tell me more about the pizza, and I was like, all right, I've lost the audience, but I'm going to go with it anyway. But it was good, and we that was one of the things we talked about was like, how do you make the best crust? And so I've been working on this one for probably 3 or 4 years. And you got to have a good pan. I put it on a really nice kind of metal pan with like the holes in the middle and stuff. And then what I do is I cook it for the next 8 minutes to kind of get crisped up. And then I'm going to throw on the ingredients here in just a bit. So for those of you listening at home, you'll just have to kind of imagine this in your head. But for those of you watching, you'll get to see it, not smell it yet. We don't have that ability, as I say yet, but yeah.
Yeah, because we have a growth mindset, so we use the word yet.
Always the power of yet. Yes, in this household as well.
So for those of you who are bakers, what you're essentially doing is you're blind baking it, right?
Yes, very good.
Yeah, I know my stuff, man. I know my stuff. Yeah.
And to be fair, I learned some of this from my wife, who's she has a nutrition major from Texas A&M. I am a Longhorn. We have a mixed marriage. We'll get into that at another time. If you look on the ring camera there, you'll see that there are Longhorns on my wedding ring there by the pizza camp. Some of them are, however, upside down, which is kind of weird, but I think it's because she bought the ring. But she taught me a lot too about the style of this. So this is kind of a mashup of both of our crusts, which again goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the workshop. It is like it's a combination of ideas, and I think that's what we've done. We've done that here in our house, but I think it's something we do in education and need to continue to do, which is what I love about that Inspiring Innovators program you guys started at Northeast, because I think you got to have a tribe, right? You got to have people that you can connect with and figure out ways to do it. And that's something that we're missing now by not having the conferences. I always miss that tribe, right? We don't get to go and visit in the hallways and have those conversations. So that's one thing I've definitely missed is like I'm still texting each other and we do Zoom sometimes, but it's not the same. I mean, it's different. It's not the same.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. There's no substitute for the human element, the connection element, reading the room. You can read a room in Zoom, you can read it in Google Hangouts, you can get a feel for it, but there really is no substitute for that. And in education, I think that's the biggest piece that we're missing, both for the educators and for the students, because for the students as well, they need their tribe. They need their group that they belong to. Like I always use the example of my oldest son. My oldest son, his tribe is band. And I thank God every day that he found band, because he took off with it, put a dent in our wallet, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And he's just, I mean, I don't want to brag or anything, but Johnson High School just won 6A in the state. He's a freshman. He walked into this. He walked into
that is awesome.
Program, contributed to it. It's part of his group, his clique, his tribe. And first year in high school virtually, and he just won state. Like, where do you? And we had to tell him, like, you do realize, like, your first year of high school, you started here. Like, if you don't win state the next 3 years, that's okay. Like you set the bar. You walked in with the bar really high set already. So
he's the M. Night Shyamalan, man. He just came in there and knocked it out of the park first way out. And then how do you follow that up?
Exactly. It's that age-old question: what is more difficult to create, your first hit single or the second hit single?
Yes. And it was I saw a great interview, and I played it with you. I think I showed it to you guys too. Is that one of the Pixar CEO where he talked about how sometimes success can be a barrier to creativity because, in his words, like once you've made the perfect formula for a movie, Toy Story is what example he was using. Who wants to change that formula? And so then you use kind of the same formula, make Toy Story 2, 3, 4, because if you mess it up, then you're the person that messed up the winning formula. And I think in education, we can listen to that and think, oh, there's certain things I know I'm comfortable with that I know I'm pretty successful with. So why do I need to change? This crust is a perfect example. I mean, this is probably the 80th iteration of this crust. We've tried every different thing. We tried the butter, we tried oil, we tried, different types of baking styles. And it's just every time it's getting better every single time. It's just iterating and iterating, right?
Yeah, it is. And that's literally being a classroom teacher. You have to roll with the punches. You got to change things up when things are not working. I mean, you've done the same thing over and over and it doesn't work. If you keep burning the crust because you're putting it in at 425 over and over and over, then maybe you need to adjust the oven temperature, get a different pan, maybe not a dark bottom pan, maybe blind bake your crust before you throw it in for that final cook. You know what I just realized? I didn't show mine off. So
what you got there? Tell me what you got.
Well, I'm going to kind of maneuver my camera really quickly. So I've got
look at this
little Supreme Action pizza there, homemade crust, obviously. My recipe does call for sugar. I do use sugar in mine because I like to bloom the yeast, and I really don't like to touch. I know that when you bloom yeast, for those of you who don't know what blooming yeast means, you're about to learn. We're going to learn you today.
There we go. Drop some knowledge.
So drop some knowledge. So yeast is literally a living organism. So you put that in some warm water. It's got to be between, it's like 70 something to 90 something degrees. Like once you hit like over 102, 105 degrees, killing the yeast. And so what you do is you want to activate the yeast. And then like you mentioned earlier, it has to feed off of something. Yeast feeds off of glucose, off of sugar. So most recipes will call for a packet, or we actually buy the big container yeast. So I use 2.25 teaspoons for a cup of water. I know my stuff, man. Warm water, and then I usually do a little bit under a tablespoon of sugar, and then you mix it around. You let that. You'll see foam start to rise to the top, and then more than that, it's that distinct yeast smell that in the air. It smells like a bakery. It's you're supposed to leave it for about 5 minutes. I let mine bloom for about 15, and before adding the flour, same thing. Some good quality olive oil. I use pink Himalayan salt as opposed to just a table salt with iodine and stuff. Look at you! I know you're going for it already, man. Yep, there you go.
There it is, right there.
That's right, pink Himalayan salt. Crush that in there.
For you non-Texans out there, you don't know where that is, but yeah, that's our HEB.
Yeah, you say that because I actually reached out to HEB for some promotion stuff. So
look at that. See, product placement. But it's interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking about the parallels to what you were just saying with yeast, and when you talk about instruction and motivating kids, right? The idea that you have to. Oh, and there's the bell. See, the classroom bell is ringing. Hold on 1 second. But I was thinking, a big part of that is that timing. You talked about the timing of the yeast and when it's going to bloom and how do you let it bloom. And I think that's something that we sometimes forget in education too, that when you give or deliver something to a kid or give them instructions, do you give them time to digest it, to make them grow and kind of bloom into it versus just like, all right, now we're moving on to the next thing, right? We're not going to reflect or anything. We're just going to go straight into the next thing. So it's interesting too. And you talk about that kind of sweet spot, right? And that's the same way with kids. You got to find that sweet timing. Absolutely. Right, let's take this out and take a look at it. Oh my God, my glasses have completely fogged up. I can't see anything now.
That's a good sign. That's a good sign.
Ooh, there we go. All right, so it's not overly done. It's got some, it's crusty on the outside, which is good. That's what we want. And now we're going to go with toppings. So, this is everything has a story, right? And when you even like food should have a story. Like I usually have music playing too because I like to thematicize everything. And so this is actually a homemade pizza spaghetti sauce, not by me. That would be awesome. A friend of mine who actually works in a local kitchen here with it's like a soup kitchen. She works for the homeless, and so one of the things she does is with them is they have like a garden. There's a thing here in Austin called Community First, and it's a center where homeless people have a chance to kind of get back on their feet. And so she does work with them, but they have a tomato garden. And so she'll take the tomatoes and jar them, and then she sells them to the community, and then uses the funds to kind of help out this group, which is kind of a neat thing. So I bought this is like it's not homeless sauce, but it's definitely it's homemade, authentic. Yeah, it's good, but it's really good. And so I've gotten to where I've fallen in love with it. And again, all about the story and the connection. I just loved that how we connected it. So I'm going to the toppings now, and we're going to see. So there's a couple different thoughts here. What we do, we could if we wanted to. If I sometimes like to put just a little bit of cheese, I don't know why, but I like to do a little bit of cheese, and then I'm going to top it, and then I'm going to put a little bit more cheese because you know what, you can never have enough cheese, right?
No, you can't. Until it wakes you up at 2:30 in the morning, and you're like, "Oh, I shouldn't have put that." In.
I didn't get this body by not eating cheese.
Oh,
but I will tell you, and this is I'm doing a couple mixes here. So this is a mozzarella, and this is kind of an Italian. It's a 6 blend. It's got all sorts of stuff in it, Fontina, a bunch of other things. This is from a different store, not the one we were just talking about, so I won't name it because it's a competitor. But I had to run down the street because I was out of cheese. And then what I did is I decided to go, speaking of health, this is actually, it looks like Italian sausage, but it's that Beyond sausage.
Oh, I love that stuff.
It's amazing. My daughter, my oldest daughter has started to go vegetarian. And so she's been doing this for probably more than a year now. And so we've been finding little things to help her. But as she's done it, we started to join her with it. So we started to add a lot of vegetarian things to our diet. And this, honestly, I can't, and I'm an Italian, but I can barely taste the difference. It's definitely not as fatty. There's some protein in there. It's called something protein Italian sausage. I can't remember, but it's that Beyond company. That's just crazy. It's good. And then some olives and some green peppers, and we got a little bit of green onions in there too. I should say green peppers and the regular onions, I should say, thrown in there as well. So that looks about good. I'm just going to dump the whole thing on there. Why not? There we go.
Right.
Because it's healthy.
She went vegetarian about a year ago.
Yeah, I'd say, and she's she's really into biology and animal science and all of that. 6th grader. So I think her driving factor is she just got kind of, I don't know. She felt bad eating animals. That was part of the motivation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're ever in any of those agriculture classes or whatever, and you start learning about that stuff, don't ever name the animal, because then you'll never look at it the same. Yeah. So how long was she grounded after she went vegetarian before you realized?
Yeah, no. Well, to be fair, I had to, right around the same time, my doctor had told me, he's like, you got cholesterol, you got to watch out for your cholesterol issues and this and that. And so I said, okay, well, what can I do? And he goes, you're going to have to do something different. And he was going to put me on some pills or something. But my wife, again, I mentioned she's a nutritionist. So she says, why don't you try going vegetarian? And I was like, okay, I'll do that. So we'll go vegetarian and see how it goes. And then she says, why don't you go vegan? And so, wow, you want to talk about a lifestyle change. Let me throw this in for a few minutes. So we went vegan for about 5 months. And it's a different world, man, if you've ever tried it. I'll just say that. It's like, I mean, there's no cheese. So you have to figure out there's vegan cheese, but it's not real. It's weird. I felt better. My cholesterol went way down. And then I kind of stayed vegetarian for the rest of the year. In fact, we were just talking about Thanksgiving and Super Bowl that year, because, as we're recording this, the Super Bowl's in 2 days. We got to talk about that, by the way, what we cooking. But we did a lot of vegetarian for the Super Bowl, too, a lot of vegan things. So that's coming up. What you got on your plate, man, for Super Bowl day?
For Super Bowl, well, I'm trying to figure out tomorrow. Tomorrow's my brother-in-law's birthday, so happy birthday to you, Derek. You better listen, man. So we do a lot of cooking here at home, and obviously because of COVID, we're not going out to restaurants and that. So he requested, we just found out a couple hours ago. I told my wife, like, hey, figure out what he wants when they come over. That way, we can buy everything and get everything ready. He asked for my barbacoa, which is it's
tell the people.
It's good stuff, man. So barbacoa is a traditional dish in Mexico. They make it different depending on the region. If you go to Mexico, it's literally beef, like literally big chunks and big cuts of beef that are stewed in a pot, and they put it underground, on top of hot coals and hot rocks, and they cover it with banana leaves and things like that.
Banana leaves, yeah.
Yeah, and they literally, and then they cover it with dirt after they seal it with leaves and that. They cover it in dirt and they cook it like all day. And then when you pull this bad boy out with the help of like all your neighbors, because it's literally a couple 100 pounds, it's the most juiciest, tender, fall apart. Don't even have to chew it. You just push it against the roof of your mouth with your tongue, and it just falls apart. It's ridiculously good. Man, talk about short story long. It's stewed beef, and I have a concoction of chilies that I use, or dried chilies that I toast, and then I will rehydrate them, and then I will make a red chili sauce, throw it into the crock pot, and then literally stew it like for 8-10 hours, and then by then you literally take 2 forks like you would with a good pot roast, and if you do the fork test and it's fork tender.
Yeah.
Falls apart, and then we dice up some white onions, some cilantro, some corn tortillas, which we'll get into later, corn versus flour.
Yes.
And
I'm ready. I think
you can put pencil shavings on this stuff. It's that good, man. It'll still be delicious. Yeah, so we're doing that tomorrow. So I don't even have the meat, so I still got to go out and get this and get it all going.
Oh, you better start, man. It's getting late.
Yeah, and then so Super Bowl, we haven't even thought about it yet, but we usually do some sort of I like to grill wings or smoke them on the grill, do something outside, because it's, with the exception of today, beautiful weather. So
yeah,
at least here in Texas.
my friends up north are like, just quit talking because it's like dumped 7 feet of snow up there. Everyone I've been talking to lately is like, what's it like? It was 84 yesterday. I was just walking outside.
Yeah, beautiful yesterday. I had to put the air conditioner on in the car.
There you go. Yeah, it's interesting though. I mean, thinking about you were talking earlier, kind of backtracking a little bit about what you're saying about making those connections and how hard that is in this current environment. And some of it comes to the stories. I mean, you just explaining and describing that process to me, like it brought me in, right? I was leaning in, listening, and I think we've had to adjust remotely because I think in a classroom setting, you're walking around and you're able to kind of have those kind of side conversations with kids and get to know them. And in this situation, we almost have to manufacture it. And there's lots. I wrote a blog a couple days ago that was just about pulling kids in right away. Like, what are some quick little tips? And I'm talking young kids to older kids too. Whether it be name that song by just like mouthing the lyrics to it or whatever. Different fun things, and they don't have to always be about the exact TEK or standard or curriculum or Common Core or whatever. Although a lot of times it can tie into that. So I think that's a big part of. So that storytelling. Talking about remote learning again, just kind of think how do we invent or manufacture that idea? Because I do think when this is all said and done, I have to say, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think, some of this is going to stick around. Parts of the things that we've learned, this innovation that's happening now. I mean, what are we going to keep? What's going to stay with us going forward? And I already see some high schools talking about, having full-time virtual classes for students because some students are absolutely crushing it and they're thriving. So why not keep that around? Sorry, I got you from Super Bowl all the way back into remote learning there.
No, not at all, man. It's like being out in the playground and talking to a student. You go from one thing to the other, and
that's my head.
The beauty of relationships, yeah. And I agree with you. There are, one of the teachers I'm working with at one of my campuses, she has this flipped scenario. Well, I don't want to use the word flipped because flipped has a connotation to it in education, but her struggle is unlike any other teacher who I'm working with. Her struggle is my online students are thriving and my in-person students are needing help.
Really?
Bad. Yeah. Every other teacher I talk to is help me with engagement, student engagement with my virtual students. Some of them don't turn their cameras on. Some of them don't do this, that, and the other. Please help me. What can I do to engage them? She's like completely opposite. She's like, they do anything and everything I ask them to online, but it's my in-person kiddos who I'm struggling with.
What's the secret? Did she say, or is it just that it's just a class makeup? Maybe it's unique.
I think it's a class makeup. And I also do believe it is a little bit of the content because she's kind of she's got a handful of different content areas that she teaches, and I also think it has to deal with her. She has that personality, and she has a relationship with the students.
Awesome.
I think some of those in-person students might be new to her. The other ones she's known from last year, and that just goes to that's proof in the pudding right there as far as relationships. I mean, you start building relationships with students, they'll move mountains for you. So the last thing they do is let you down.
So where are you getting? I mean, you're helping them out, but where are you getting? I mean, I know I came in the other day and we did a workshop, but where are you learning right now? Because like as we're recording this, it's the end of it's TCA week, right? Which is usually the week that all of us Texas educators flock to the convention center in Austin or San Antonio or Dallas. It was supposed to be this year to kind of get our own professional learning. But did you go this year? Or did you attend? Air quotes. Neither did I.
I did not go. Nor did I go to FETC, which was free. What I do is, I consume a lot of educational podcasts. So I listen to that. I started a separate book today, but I'm reading another one on blended learning, and I'm tuned into social media. I don't have the huge social media following and the huge PLN like some of other folks do. And I tend to be a little bit more quiet on social media. I don't necessarily post every day. I'll post maybe 2-3 times a week, and I try to stick to podcast stuff and stuff that I directly deal with teaching and coaching and things like that. So I'm a little bit more quiet on social media, and maybe that's something I need to work on more. But that doesn't mean that I'm not out there soaking it in. So even if I don't participate in a Twitter chat, I'll look up the hashtag later and soak some of that stuff in. I do a lot of YouTube stuff as far as consuming. And obviously now creating. But I consume a lot, and just because I'm not putting it out there doesn't mean that I'm not internalizing that stuff and I'm taking it in. So I get my stuff from everywhere, man. And I just had a conversation with another teacher today. One of my big I don't even know what you would call it, but one of my big ideas or one of my big pieces of me
big,
is
hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah, but I've always gone into education thinking, especially now, being an educator makes me a better father, and being a father makes me a better educator. So I
I love
learned
it.
I learned both from both worlds. So I'm able to hear our own children's gripes at home sometimes, and then I take those back to work with me. I think about them, I ponder on them. There's a part of me that wants to reach out to teachers, like my son just said that
I
he's.
know.
But I can't. I don't want to overstep my boundaries, especially if that campus is not one that I technically support. If it's somebody else's, but I take a lot of that stuff in and I try to incorporate it with my teachers. And then some of the teachers that I work with, if they have some great ideas, I try to tell my son about it or, what have you, and talk to the particular support for that campus. So I tend to soak in more than what people think I might. So I'm all over the place. And you just gave me the clubhouse hookup. Man,
Oh yeah.
I've been fighting for that I've been fighting that for a long time. And I finally said, all right, Carl, send it over
Let's
my way.
try it.
And
It's
let's
it's
try it.
it's interesting. So today was my first real full. I've had it for about a month. So those of you listening that don't know, Clubhouse is like a social media platform. It's audio based. Actually, it's only audio based, and it can only be done on an iPhone at the moment. Came out about 2 months ago, but it's essentially what I like. I like how it's set up. It's about the conversations. It's not about the content. So Facebook and Twitter and YouTube are all about the content. This is all about the conversation because none of it's recorded. It's all just it's kind of you throw a topic up there and you schedule a room, and then as you scroll through the hallway is what it's called. I think you scroll through this little hallway, which is just a stream. You pick the room you want to jump into, and then you jump on, and there's 3 or 4 people on stage, so to speak, talking. If you want to say something, you raise your hand and you can come up. But when you join in, your mic is muted. And you can't actually turn it on until someone invites you onto the stage, so to speak. So we played with it today. We did a little TCA wrap up with Jenna Lee, the crew from up in Dallas.
Oh yeah.
And it was cool. Like Angela Myers dropped by and said hi. She jumped into the chat, and then Lisa Dabbs and the Tech Rabbi, and it just ended up being like what I was talking about earlier. That experience of we're all in the hallway at TCA convention or whatever, and then you see somebody like, oh, let's talk to them, and then everyone just kind of gathers and starts talking. It was neat to hear voices and very informal. Kind of a podcast light, I would say.
Shout out to Jenny Long and Celie Clark if you're listening or watching this. Jenna Lee, the famous Jenna Lee, make sure you subscribe to them. But yeah, those are those little things, those little nuances that I didn't know about. I thought it when I first heard about it on a podcast, on a music podcast that I actually listened to, and they were talking about it, and it sounded very Voxer like.
Yes.
So maybe they didn't do a great job of explaining the ins and outs of it, and now knowing that you can't speak unless unless you're up on stage or whatever, that changes everything. Okay, so I'm gonna definitely dive into that world.
And there's no emote, there's no way to chat, and there's no way to really, except for talking, there's no way to communicate. So what people did is they've already hacked it. And so if you ever get on it and you start to see like people's microphones blinking, it's because that's applause. So if you want to applaud someone's comment, like kind of snaps like you do at a poetry slam, you just hit the unmute really quick and your little thing blinks. And so you see people blinking like, oh, what did I say? Like, no, they're all like agreeing with what you just said. It's kind of a neat little applause, which is kind of cool. So I just today I picked up a ton of stuff. There's potential there. I do think for education. There's only a few thousand. I hear the bell.
And it's invite only. No, right? It's invite only right now. So
yeah. All right, I'm going to switch to this camera here. We're going to go to oven cam. Well, this is still pizza cam, and we're going to pull it up. There we go. Let's take a look here and see how we're doing. Oh, I probably need like some sort of mechanism of which to take this out of the oven because I burned my hands many times. Yeah. Good. We've got some good brown right there. Yeah, look at that. I could let it go a little bit longer if I wanted to, but actually, already see some brown on the top there, so I'm gonna take it out.
It's like a classroom. You need to read when you go from I got my point across to they're now bored. It's the same thing with pizza. No matter, I mean, you could set 2 identical ovens at 400 degrees, put the same identical food in there, but humidity, everything, all those factors come into play, and that's why you always have to keep an eye on it.
Well, I used to say, I used to DJ too back in my former life, DJ weddings mostly. But I used to say that teachers could make good DJs too, because when you're DJing, you're also like thinking, you're reading the audience, right? Like, okay, we need a slow song here, or oh, we need to speed it up because they're not quite paying attention. And I think the same is true now. And I think that's kind of probably the bigger struggle too with remote learning, is that teachers like, wow, I can't really read the room as well as they used to. So I'm going with the traditional 8 here. Sometimes I'll do a 12 slice or a 10 slice, which is a great trick to save calories because you don't need as many slices. But yeah, we've got that there. Got some good pull going on. A little bit of cheese. Oh, there we go.
Hey, as we talk more and more, we are so much alike. I used to DJ in my previous life as well.
See?
Yeah, the DJ, man.
I knew we were kindred spirits. The DJing thing, there's connection though, I think. And teachers are like, no, I don't know. I was like, no, if you really think about it, right, the principles of DJing, it is very much reading the audience, reading the room, especially in a wedding. And even at like a club, which is a little bit harder. I could never quite master that. I had the turntables and stuff, but it is a lot about reading the audience and knowing when to take breaks and when to pace it.
Did you have 12 techniques, 1200s?
No, I was late in the game. So what I had it was the iPad 2. Remember the iPad 2 with the big fat 30-pin connector?
30-pin connector?
And it's a physical board that I'd actually had it plugged into, and I had my software and stuff running. It was like DJ 2 Pro or something. Yeah. And it would run and I had little switchers and it had 2 little turntables, all just digital. So, and it was cool until the iPad 2 was no longer supported. And then that one device could only be used for that. And that's a whole nother topic about what happens with technology when it goes away. But yeah, that was what I used. So you were old school. Were you kicking on the 1s and 2s and everything?
I used to battle people. I was old school. Yeah. Oh man. I literally still have my record collection in one of our broom closets, if you want to call it that. But yeah, I told my kids about it, and they're like, because in the eyes of your kids, my dad can't be a geek. No way. Yeah, I used to DJ, man. I used to tear it up in the clubs and stuff. Yeah, man, that's crazy. So not only do we know how to make a banging pizza crust, not only are we both in the education realm and in the people industry and helping people who help our students, we could throw down on the 1s and 2s.
That's right. I'm gonna make it scratch right now. No. I had to do with that. Was just another weird connection there, but yeah. No, I think that's awesome. Music has always been a big thing. In fact, that post I was referring to earlier, my number one thing for engagement of students is if you have music playing when they come into your classroom, or if you have it when you're doing it online or remotely, just that little bit. You notice even in the workshop that we did, I had music kind of going on in the background. There's times you throw that in there, and so I think that kind of invites them in. And then what I discovered from talking to middle school and high school teachers, one of the techniques they use is they actually let the kids pick the song of the day. And just that little bit, now it had to be appropriate, of course, but that little bit of ownership, there's actually a lot of good research about how when a student has a little bit of ownership in their classroom, they actually lean in more and they want to learn more. So when the song would be played, they'd come on, oh, that's my song. And the teacher would randomly pick it. So you never knew which song it was, which day, but the kids were always excited. They were wanting to get on as fast as they could to see, right, whose song was it of the day. And think about how small that is, because you only do it for like 15, 20 seconds. But just that alone, it just brings people in. And that's the power of music too, which is a big thing for me. We did a Would You Rather the other day. Like, would you rather never watch a movie again or never be able to hear music again? I was like, I love movies, but I got to have my music.
Yeah, I'm the same way, man. I'm the same way. I can't take a walk down to the front of the community watching a movie. I could, but I might end up in the middle of the street and
later on. Fountain. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you, man. Yeah. The power of music, the power of student choice and input, buy-in.
Yeah.
It's all about building relationships. Is that bad boy good enough to pop in your mouth without you burning?
I'm going to try it. Yeah. It's probably a little dangerous, but I'm going to try it.
All right. I'm going to take my.
You ready?
As well.
Yours has been sitting there for a while, so I feel bad for you because you've had to wait. So yours still warm. All right. We're going to try this. Okay. Here we go.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Let's do this thing.
Got that crunch. That crunch when it hits the bottom. That's the important thing. And that's the thing that I always missed. And it took me years to get to because it was always at soggy bottom, but I wanted it to have that real, it's hard to see again on here, but the bottom of that, it's just got that real solid edge to it.
Yeah.
It's like not super thick either.
Like a good brownie has to have that.
Oh, yes.
A little crust.
But then soft in the inside. Yes, exactly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can't overmix dough. If you overdo it and you get a little bit too much gluten, it's got a little bit more pull to it and a little bit more resistance. It's balance. It's all about balance.
Yep.
Gosh,
such is life.
Hey, you know what? My family bought me for Christmas. They bought me a Soda Stream because I like to drink carbonated water so much. Do you own one by any chance?
Here, let me switch over to this camera again. This is a tour of Carl's kitchen.
All right.
Yeah, right there. The old school Soda Stream.
Best invention ever.
We've been trying lots of different things. Honestly, I'll go through phases where I won't use it a lot. Let me put that back down there. I'll go through phases where I don't use it that much, and then we almost forget about it, and we're like, oh, it's sitting there in the corner, and we're like, oh, I want root beer, and it makes a really good root beer, and it is great for that, and it just saves. And we don't want to go and get a bunch of cans and bottles and stuff anyway, so it helps the environment, which of course my daughters love too because they're all about that. So yeah, I do. They've loved it too. They like just making the little kind of the Sprite concoction that's out of there. They love that.
Yeah, I drink a lot of just flavored carbonated waters. Like, when if I'll go to lunch or something. Actually, sometimes I go to HEB and pick up like a sandwich or something during lunch. I always get those Topo Chicos, the carbonated water flavored. I can drink those all day. I could live off of those. And finally, my I think it was like a Saturday morning, and I woke up early with my son and we're watching TV, and a commercial for the Soda Stream came on, and I said, "That's what I want right there. That's what I want." And he didn't forget. He told my wife about it and said, "Dad wants a Soda Stream." He called it a fizzy wizzy. He was like,
a fizzy wizzy.
And then we were talking later, and then he brought it up, and I was like, fizzy wizzy, what the heck is that? And Soda Stream. Okay, you see the connection, right?
I do. Fizzy wizzy. Now I got to hold on. I got to show you my other love. I'm going to bring it over to the camera. But my latest thing that I've started kind of being fascinated with, and this isn't good TV because you can't see me, but hopefully you can still hear me. I got a COVID vaccine on Monday.
Yeah.
And one of the things they tell you is like you're not supposed to drink. You shouldn't drink anyway. I mean, for a while around either side of it, just because you want your body to be in optimal shape for this thing. And it was rough for about a day, but so I've been trying not to drink. We had dry January and did all that anyway. So I've started to get to where I just love ginger beer. And I don't know if you ever had this is one of my favorite ones. This is a Diet Gosling's ginger beer. But I haven't tried the Soda Stream version yet to see if they have one for the Soda Stream because it got a nice little bit of spice to it. It's not ginger ale, so it's not super sweet. But it's a good one just to have on hand, of course. And if you do drink, it's good. It mixes really well with like a vodka or a bourbon or something. But that's a whole nother podcast. But this is just like my go-to, like Friday night, and just sipping on this thing, and it feels great. 0 calories, so I'm just kind of loving life.
Maybe we should do another podcast like EdTech Slurs, like after the 20-30 minute mark.
Yeah, no, I've got
the problem is, Carl.
I got invited to a conference in Minnesota last month, and they had this little they had a 20-minute session after 4:00, and they said, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "Can I do anything?" They're like, yeah, I was like, "I'll do a mixology class." I'm like, really? And I was like, I want to bring some cocktails together. For those of you who don't know, I own a bar here in Austin. I'm part investor of a bar here on Rainy Street. And I thought I'd love to figure out a way to mix up some stuff and just do it. It'd be hard to do remotely because people would have to have the same ingredients, but you could do something basic like grab your bourbon, grab your this. Anyway, it's an interesting idea, kind of like what you're doing with yours with the food, but it would be, I don't know, the EdTech bartender maybe. I don't know. That is a Twitter handle. I saw it out there.
Okay, so yeah, I do follow you on social media, and I've seen your post at the actual bar.
Yeah.
Okay. When we're all vaccinated and things are quote unquote back to normal, we're going to have to do an episode over there.
We have to do one live. Yeah. I honestly, full disclosure, I haven't been since November 5th. So it's been 3 months to today that I've been there. And I was there with Jenna Lee, believe it or not. I invited them out, and it's an outdoor bar. So luckily, and at the time the numbers weren't too bad. So we were able to sit out, and our bar really follows the protocols pretty well. Unlike some other ones I'll just say on Rainy Street who aren't, but, it's an interesting time, I will say, to be a bar owner and to invest in this about 2 months before the pandemic hit. So I was like, "Oops, there went that investment." But it's been pretty cool just to get to know the in and outs of it. I'm by far a very hands off, owner. I don't go in there and like tell them what to do, but it's just been interesting to see the process and learn a different business. We always got to be stretching ourselves in different ways. And when I gave up the DJ thing, I wanted to go a different direction. I was like, "What else am I going to do? Okay, let me try this now."
Well, now you could DJ at your own bar.
Yeah. And we make pizza. We'll have it all set up. We'll make a podcast. Right. We'll have a clubhouse, both in person and online.
Yeah. Now that when you brought up Gently right now, I think I remember seeing that, and I couldn't tell if it was like a throwback memory from a couple years ago or if it was real time. So, okay, it all makes sense now. It's coming back.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
they're prolific on the Insta, as the kids say. They're on Instagram a lot. Yes.
Cheers to you and your bar, and hope that everything will go well. I think it's time for another bite of pizza, man.
Yep. And if you guys are in Austin, I'm hoping that TCA at some point comes back to Austin, but if it doesn't, it's right by the convention center. It's called Idle Hands, which is extremely appropriate for this time in our lives. You ready? Here we go. It's fallen off a little bit. I probably had too much toppings. I need to get my cheese to topping ratio a little bit better because it's falling apart, but still tasty.
Oh, man. Even bad pizza? It's still pizza.
So do you find this, you have kids, so do you find that they have a different appreciation for like the home cooked stuff versus what you're bringing? I mean, there's some good pizza out there too, don't get me wrong. But like my kids have started to become, I hate to admit it, or maybe I'm proud, they're pizza snobs, because there's times when they'll be like, ooh, I don't know, Dad, this pizza's gummy. I don't like, I'm like, yeah, you know what? It's not really that good. Like, it's not like how you make it, or like here we have Via 313, which is a really good pizza joint that's here. It's a Detroit style. But have you seen that with all the cooking that you're doing? Like, do they get to where like, this is not like Dad makes?
It's funny that you bring that up because they're huge fans of my wife's enchilada. She makes a really good
I know I need some.
And we've had them at other places, and they always say, no, it doesn't compare to yours, Mom. I think they're burger snobs. And gosh, I'm trying to think what else. I don't know that I've paid too much attention to that, but now I'm going to be thinking about it.
So what's their burger then? Do they have like the number one? Is there an out to eat place that they like?
We like to, burgers are one thing that we like to try different places every time, but I think they like our homemade burgers more than anything. Hopefully in the next couple weeks, month, maybe, I'd like to buy a Blackstone griddle, the big 36 one. Because I used to be a fan of the big thick burgers, medium rare inside, pink, but I've been really doing a lot of smash burgers lately.
Yeah.
Crispy, you get a nice crust on it, and maybe even do a couple different patties on there. But I think that's what they like more than anything, a good burger. And then my oldest is like, he'll come around the corner like, hey, Dad, can you toast the buns real quick? It's like a complete package when I told them, if you're going to toast the bun, most people put butter on the bun before you put it on the cast iron griddle. No, son, put mayo. You put a light mayo.
Oh, yes.
And then
a little bit of mayo.
Yes. And that's where you get a nice even crust. And then it kind of steams the bun at the same time. We need to be meeting in person, man. This is ridiculous.
I know. See, that's it. I mean, I need to get there, and I want to try the Four Horsemen burger, which is legendary, of course, there in San Antonio. I had a friend who tried it about a year ago and told me that he was telling me about his friend who was with him, and he said his friend got so sick because I don't know if you guys, the Four Horsemen burger, it's like, isn't it like it's poblano, jalapeno, habanero, and ghost pepper, I think? No, serrano and ghost pepper. Yeah. Okay. It's like 4 different peppers on top of it. And it's a really good looking burger, but then he got all that. And he apparently got so sick with it because of the heat that he threw up, and then his blood vessel in his eye burst open. So for like 3 months, he's a teacher going to school with this bloody eye. I was like, what happened? I was like, well, it was a spicy burger. That's what got me in the end. You got to make something else up. You don't say it's a spicy burger.
Yeah, a colleague of mine who was actually in that session that you joined us for, he was telling me a story about one of his buddies at a high school. He's a teacher. I think he's like a gym teacher, if not a coach. Real buff guy, fit, young, strapping young lad. And I guess he was out for about 3 or 4 days. And then my buddy, saw him when he came back and said, hey, you okay? You were out. He was like, yeah, I threw my back out, man. Like I was immobile for 3 days. Oh, how'd it happen? He thought it was some crazy gym accident. No, the guy went to brush his teeth and he went too far and had the gag reflex. And literally threw us back out for 3 days.
Oh my God. Yes, you make up a story for that. You definitely make up a story for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a burning building. There were kittens in there. It was right next to an orphanage, So yeah, you got
one of these days I'll have to tell you the story of how I got 14 stitches in my eye in Mexico, above my eye in Mexico, but that's a whole nother podcast. That's the After Hours podcast.
I love it already, man. I love it already. So we've had some great conversations about education in general, conferences, virtual. How long do you think we can sustain this whole hybrid emergency teaching model that we're doing right now?
I mean, as long as we have to, obviously, is the answer. But I think in terms of our own mental health and mental well-being, it's going to be. I think if it goes beyond this year, we're going to have to really start thinking about long and hard about the social and emotional health of kids. I know that it's already come up a lot. I will say kids are really resilient. They're a lot more resilient than we are. And you guys, you know this, you've got kids, and they recover quicker than anybody. And so people are worried about the long-term social ramifications of all of it. And I was like, you know what? This happened in the 1919s or whatever, and they were fine after that too. And they didn't have the ability to connect like we do. So I think as long as it's not longer than, like, if it's 2 or 3 years, we've probably got some problems. So I think coming back, and it's already starting to pick up a little bit. I feel like we're starting to be on. Maybe we're over the crest of it. I think we're going to be okay. But I do see the rest of this year probably hybridized, and then I see going forward, like I talked about earlier. I think there's going to be some option of that, and we need to have it. I mean, this idea in the state of Texas, you have to be physically in a seat to get money from the state of Texas. Is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, that's terrible policy that needs to be changed. But the other thing I'll say that needs to be changed, that needs to be added and continued, is flexible scheduling of some sort. I don't know, it's not perfect for everybody. Again, it doesn't need to be every schedule is flexible, but to allow some flexibility for our students, especially our older students, I feel like that's going to have to be something that just comes out of this that's going to be amazing. Because, I was thinking the other day, like, I know this amazing history teacher in Iowa. I'm like, why do I have to physically be taking history from the teacher here who maybe doesn't like teaching history when I could be taking her class in Iowa? And maybe all of a sudden we start breaking some of those walls down. But again, it comes down to funding, policy, state standards. Those are the things that unfortunately are roadblocks that we have to overcome. But that's a long way to answer your question there. But I do think we'll stick with it for a little bit, and then hopefully we'll get some really good innovation out the back end.
Yeah, and I think what really left a sour taste in my mouth, no pun intended, with all this eating, those decisions that were being made, they were being made remotely. Like if you're going to talk about bringing everyone back and taking away state funding for local school districts because they're not having students in the seats, then why don't you meet at the Capitol, sit down, or go to a campus, sit down as a group, talk about it for some odd hours a day, go have lunch in the cafeteria together, come back, continue that conversation, and jump on the same bus to go home every day.
Yeah.
And
that's why I'm no longer allowed to testify either. But I mean, it's that same idea that, I was talking to someone from TEA today, actually, which is ironic. They're our big agency here, our state agency, and it's and I ended up putting them all on kind of blast on Twitter because I've decided that they are not the right leadership for the state at this moment. There are certain leaderships and there's certain leaders across this country right now that are meeting the moment. Like anybody can steer a ship when the water's calm kind of idea.
Yeah.
And I just feel like they're failing epically. And I think what you just said hit it on the head, because this particular person is working remotely, but is insisting that schools go back in person. So it's just dripping with irony there. And so that said, we can only control what we can control, and we can work with our teachers. We can get our teachers ready for it. We can get our students excited about it. We can figure out ways to make that community kind of seem like a community, even if it were manufacturing those ways online. Those are the things that you and I can control. So I think we just continue to do that, and listening to our kids, like you said earlier, that's the best voice we have. And the fact that you have those voices in your house, I mean, use that every day you can.
Absolutely. Well, I could talk to you for hours, man. But I hate to.
At the bar next time.
At the bar next time in person, and vaccinated as well. So How can people connect with you on social media?
Well, on Clubhouse, no. I'm at Mr. Hooker on Clubhouse, at Mr. Hooker on Twitter, at Hooker Tech on Instagram. I've got an online course called the Remote Learning Coach that just came out about a couple months ago. Got a lot of these little things you and I talked about that are built into that course. Doing 2 podcasts right now. I'm doing the ISTE Learning Unleashed podcast and the Future Ready Undisrupted podcast. So I guess I like in my podcast titles, apparently. I just realized they both have that in there. So yeah, and then my blog, hookedoninnovation.com, and then my website, carlhooker.com. So just a few places. And then my YouTube channel at Carl Hooker too, which I'm trying to add more to. I got to get like you, man. I got to get back. I got to get on the YT, because I feel like that's where a lot of people are pushing to. But I'm still learning it, man. Just like you, man. Just got to be a learner.
Yeah, I don't know it yet, but I'm getting there. Absolutely. And for those of you listening, if you're listening to this and you don't have the ability to write anything down, don't worry about it. All of Carl's social media handles and channels and blog websites and that will be in the show notes. So just click on the show notes and make sure you follow him. Make sure you connect with him if you're not already connected with him already. Carl, I love the conversation, man. I like I said, I feel like we could chat for hours. I do have one last question for you, though, man.
I knew it's coming. Oh boy. Yeah, go ahead.
Flour tortillas or corn tortillas, my friend?
Oh man, I gotta go with corn. And the reason why is, and my kids like flour, just full transparency, but I have gotten to where I really appreciate. I feel like flour just is too gummy. There's too much stuff. I didn't know if you wanted an explanation, but I'm going to give it to you. I didn't know if it was just like corn and then the show. Corn and the show. No, yeah, I just feel like it holds up. It's got a different. It brings a different flavor palette to it. And I feel like the flour overpowers whatever's in it. I feel like the corn is a good transportation vehicle for the yumminess that's inside.
It's a vessel.
It's a vessel.
Vessel.
Yes.
Vessel. That's what it is. And man, there's nothing like, late night, you need a snack, you heat up a corn tortilla with a little bit of just like a slice of avocado, some green sauce, yes, red sauce. That's a midnight snack. Gluten-free, yep, vegetarian. It's actually vegan.
Yes, it is. That was something I relied on heavily during that time.
Absolutely.
And I don't eat seafood, but I mean, when I do eat it, I will put fish on a fish taco, and I love fish tacos with corn tortillas.
You sounded like the Dos Equis guy. I don't always drink beer, but when I do.
Hey-o.
Yeah. Well, Carl, I enjoyed the conversation with you, man. Thank you very much for connecting with me and the listeners here on the EdTech Bites podcast, or the viewers out there on YouTube. So we appreciate you, everything you do. I tip my hat. Thank you for everything you contribute to this educational space. Thanks for the inspiration, the motivation, for your recipe, for your pizza that you've developed and perfected over the past couple of years. I wish the best for you, man. And I know this is not going to be our last conversation that we have together.
For sure, man. Thanks so much for having me on, and get back to those records, man. I'm ready to hear you spinning them out there again.
On the 1-2 wooka wookas. Sounds good, man. All right, man. You have a good evening, and we'll catch up soon, brother. Thank you.
Cheers.